My name is Jeff Thomas. I'm a photo-based artist and I'm also an independent curator. And in regards to the exhibition that's here today is kind of a culmination of a lot of different thoughts and ideas that I've been pursuing in terms of representation of First Nations people historically and in a contemporary sense as well. In 1996, I had an exhibition in Ottawa titled Portraits from the Dancing Grounds. And that exhibition was the first exploration that I took on in terms of, I looked at the gallery space as a way to, like a sketch pad, to put ideas and photographs up on the walls to see how they work together, whether they work together or not, and if the ideas that I was pursuing were sound. And it really represented the issues that I was concerned about, which was the urban Aboriginal person. And looking at that specifically, so the dancing grounds were in fact a combination of my family's lineage to Six Nations Reserve, to my hometown of Buffalo, New York, to historical archives and the National Archives of Canada. This was all part of what formed my particular dancing ground. Over the years, I've been looking at the question of how do you bring storytelling, which is a part of my tradition, into the gallery space. And I've never been comfortable with just the simple act of putting a photograph on the wall and kind of having it speak for itself. I see it as a point of departure. So the photograph really raises questions, and then how do you engage people in that process? So here with this show is the first time that I've incorporated a spoken word piece in the exhibition itself. My son, who's a DJ and video artist, laid out the soundtrack for me and also cut in the dialogue as well. I guess it's more of my curatorial practice of looking at exhibition spaces and often wondering, how do you get people more engaged in being a part of the exhibition so that when they leave with the ideas and they feel that they've been a part of something that was going on in the space. How do you bring it to life? And in Aboriginal cultures, First Nations cultures, performative is always a part of artistic expression. And I feel that we should be able to incorporate this into the gallery space as well. So the way to do that, I bring in a miniature Indian figure and offer people to pose with him, and then I make a portrait, and in return they get a photograph of themselves posed with the Indian. Another layer to that exercise is also about the stereotype, about actually placing people in relationship to the stereotype itself, and how do they look in terms or in relationship to that stereotype, and how does that begin to break down the barriers that come up from that type of thinking. I happened to see this guy in a souvenir shop and decided that he'd work really well for the series. And he's really, I think, iconic in a way that he represents a lot of that mythology of the Wild West, of the type of Indian figure that people are most familiar with. So if you were asked somebody, describe what an Indian is or what they look like, I would imagine that quite often this is what people would be familiar with. So here is that basis where it begins to kind of gel with the community in terms of, well, what does it all mean? Well, the technology is always important in terms of the type of images that you want to produce. I find that as I do more web-based projects, I find that digital has an element, a part to play in that process. But I like the traditional form of taking the time and looking at the print itself rather than looking at it in the viewfinder and the camera. And that, I mean, it has its applications and it's working itself into my work, but in terms of converting to digital, it's not a part of what I do. I still like the traditional process of using a camera.